I want to share you with my colleagues at Power. So to give you perspective, these are the things I would like to talk about. This is for the groups. Obviously, there'll be a welcome. I want to talk about the Soapbox Series, which we're engaged in now. Baron, I want to touch early life crossroads. I want to touch UCLA, NBA years. You being a culture carrier, I want us to describe what that means among us, right, to the team. VC investing experience, NFT experience, the media stuff that you're doing, economic inequality, other projects you may be working on, your philanthropic efforts, and then lastly, I'll leave it up to questions. So definitely a bunch to talk about. Just want to welcome you again for the crowd. The way I think about Baron Davis is obviously many people know him as an athlete, but I think of him as like an athlete just in like the form of life. He's touching, I was talking about this earlier, Baron, he's touching so many different things. And, I just want to say thank you for giving us time, because he's also one of those guys that everybody is always asking of time for him. I ask for time for Baron as well too. So, whether it be 45 minutes, an hour, 15 minutes, I thank you for making your time. An LA native, which I appreciate. I'm from LA as well. And it really is a pleasure being able to have you in front of my colleagues. So for perspective, Baron, Power Digital, we've been around for 10 years. We're based in San Diego, but we have offices in every major city, or most major cities across the country. We're about 600 employees, and we do all things cool digital marketing or growth marketing. And so we have these regular talks with people of the community, of culture, that have demonstrated success in varying ways. We had head of legal for WME or UFC fighting, Rashay McKnight. You probably know Rashay. We probably got before in Miami. We had Candace. We've had Candace, who was actually head of J. Cole's record label. She did a lot of stuff with Will Smith in production. You probably know Candace. She's in LA too. But the goal is really for me to bridge my network, or to highlight my networks, my friends, people that I, objectively think are cool and doing interesting things, and allowing them to talk about their lives and what they're working on. So as I mentioned, a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. Maybe we just actually start, Baron, in terms of where you grew up. Obviously, I know you grew up in LA. Just talk about household structure. I read about, your grandmother being an instrumental part in who you are as an individual, but also just want to hear your perspective in terms of, what that's like now, or excuse me, your thoughts about growing up in LA. And I know you're a father, versus, the experience that your kids may be having, how they may be similar, but I'm assuming how they're very different as well.
Rachel, where'd you get that jersey? Oh my goodness. I don't even have that.
You got to tell the story, Rachel. You're on mute, Rachel. You got to tell the story.
Baron Davis, my dad went to UCLA with Cream, and he had 2 daughters, and we grew up going to UCLA basketball games all the time. So I still have this in my closet. I knew I was saving it for today. So when I saw your name pop up, I'm just like, I kind of want to invite my dad to this Zoom call, but just big fans, followed you in the NBA too. And so excited to have you chatting with all of us. And I knew I was holding on to this for a special occasion. So excited.
I designed that jersey. Myself and Earl Watson, we sat in and we convinced Coach Lavin that UCLA should have black jerseys. He said he was going to get fired for it. We debuted him in Louisville, and for 3 weeks, the alumni were trying to fire Steve Lavin because we had black jerseys. Thank you all for taking the time. I'm Baron Davis, Los Angeles native. I say I was born in South Central Los Angeles, grew up in South Central, under, all of the things you could imagine that happens in South Central. I got a private school scholarship to a place called Crossroads, which is, if anybody's from LA, Crossroads is like the Disneyland for education. And so I always say that, my life growing up from 7th grade to high school was similar to like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, except I did not have Uncle Phil, and I did not live in Bel-Air. I lived in South Central Los Angeles. So, being able to grow up and to, kind of navigate your way through school from South Central to Santa Monica and see all the people that are also in transport, going to work, going to school, it was also almost for me going from like darkness into light, right? And so, really trying to understand that there's this route that I have to take in order to have peace, in order to study, in order to have some freedom. And then there's a route that I take back from the freedom where I know I have to be guarded and protect myself and trust my instincts, and not be, and not be a lot of things that I don't, that I could be. So I think, for me, it's, growing up in LA, coming from South Central, going to a private school, then going to UCLA, I would say my great resolve is to really solve the problem here in LA. Right. And, I've tried to do that in documentaries with the Crips and Bloods gang doc, uh, through basketball and, coaching kids and, creating a brand, LA Unified, that was really just create a collective around successful people in LA and sports and lifestyle that can shepherd the next generation of, talent. I was saying on my other side of Baron Davis is I'm hyper creative. I love, creative, projects, producing, directing, coming up with marketing plans, things of that nature. So, it's creative design with intent to, being able to empower people that have mostly been, overlooked and underutilized and undermanaged.
BD, I appreciate that, man. I was before you got on the call, I actually described you as an artist, right? Literally just like in every way. And I kind of teed it up and said that you're touching so many things. I did not know you designed the jersey. I am not surprised that you designed the jersey at all.
I have an album out too. It's Bart Oatmeal.
Yeah.
Y'all can download it on iTunes. Get a Ball Volume 1.
Perfect. No, see, I appreciate that. I want more of that too. A couple things, man. Like Crossroads, for perspective, really is like the Disneyland. They may know of like Harvard Westlake or Sierra Canyon, but it's a premier school. One thing I do appreciate about your experience is that, and it's actually reflecting on how you operate in the world now, is like the sense of like duality and your ability to navigate any space, right? So you can be back in the 80s on your neighborhood, or be back in any neighborhood. You can be in a boardroom, you can be overseas, and you're just comfortable having those conversations. And so would you attribute, your level of comfort and your curiosity, because you definitely ask a lot of questions, intellectual questions, to that Crossroad experience? Like, I'd love to kind of investigate or expand about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say, at Crossroads, when I got there, we called our teachers by their first name. So that was like a game changer from, going to church and being in a public school where it was Mr., Mrs., ma'am, and so Crossroads, like by calling your teacher by their first name, it just almost gave you an opportunity to have conversations with that person. It made them a person. And so it removed kind of like the relationship of teacher to student, and it made it a little bit more personal. Right. And so I think with that, you are encouraged to challenge opinion, right? You could challenge authority if it wasn't fact. Like everybody has a right to their opinion. Everybody has kind of like a right to their point of view. And so, going to a school like that, I think it just opened my eyes, one, to other people's culture, right? Because it's like a small little diverse melting pot, other people's talent, right? The arts and science was, the biggest department in the school. And so there were kids flying in doing the opera, leaving and performing in the opera in 11th grade. You had Kate Hudson, who was starring in, a movie when she was in high school. And so there was just a level of freedom early on in your adolescence that allowed you to be as creative or whoever you wanted to be. So like that dream capacity, right, or having the ability to dream and have freedom of expression of who you are and being accepted that way, I think that's what Crossroads provided. South Central, it created a realism, right? And so for me as a storyteller or someone, it's like always looking at that magical realism, because I started to understand people more, right? I could understand the crackhead on the corner and have a conversation, you know what I mean? And I could have a conversation with the dean of students. And I feel like, just being in that position in that environment, to see the Rodney King verdict, and then to drive home and like your house is like in the middle of the riots, it's just a dynamic that, as you start thinking about people, you start thinking about worlds, you start thinking about people's story, right? There's a whole story around the riots. That's a LA story, and not just buildings burning, you know what I mean? Or just the Rodney King. Like, there was a frustration that grew from Santa Monica to South Central, and, a miscommunication just between people that, never really had an opportunity to interact. And so when you look at LA, it's probably one of the most segregated cities, big cities in America. And, for me, my goal was to find those routes, build those bridges, and allow people to, engage and, collaborate together. So LA could be really a city that, was that melting pot and everything they claim.
So when Barron came out of Crossroads, he had offers from every major hoop school. The Dukes, the Georgia Techs, the Kansas of the worlds, but he chose to go to UCLA. So BD, I would love to talk about, your UCLA experience. You were there for 2 years, and then you out to the draft and had much success. We'll get to that next, but just really want to talk to you just in terms of why UCLA. Like, if you wouldn't mind sharing one of your fondest moments, if not the Jersey moment, when you were at UCLA, I think that would be helpful too.
Yeah, I want to shout out to UCLA. I decided to stay at UCLA because there was a young culture of like basketball players and point guards that kind of needed me to stay, so they could come to the games, get free tickets, all that. And so that was kind of like the first wave. I think being at UCLA was, it was fun. It was probably the best years of my life. Just being with teammates, being here. I don't think I ever hardly went home until I got hurt. Tore my knee after my freshman year. I gained like 45 pounds. I used to eat Big Macs and filet of fish combos every day. And I would say if it wasn't for like my teammates, my coaches, and like just the people at school, like I really had like, that was the first time I felt like I had like a fan base or like a support system. And, I came back, I was able to play my sophomore year, got drafted third.
So you had 2 great years at UCLA. You entered the draft, number 3 overall pick to the Hornets, right? I think that was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just kind of talk to me about that process, like the surrealism of it all happened, kind of going back from you being a kid, hooping as a red in your grandmother's house, right, bouncing the ball, driving her crazy, as we all do, to like literally hosting your jersey up or wearing a hat and being an NBA player.
It was super surreal. You think, I'm 19 years old, I get drafted. It's not really about the money. It's about, oh shit, like, where am I going to live? What is this place? Where is this place? And so it was really like starting my life as an adult, as a 19-year-old in Charlotte. And so I decided like, I was going to be the best babysitter of my kids, of my teammates' kids. And so like, that would be like my rookie duties, is I would babysit so they can take their wives out to dinner, during the season. And I would just hang out with the kids. And shout out to Marshall Roush, Senator Marshall Roush. He was, I want to say he was about 67, 68 at the time. We became best friends, and he adopted me as his grandson. I adopted him as my second grandpa, but he taught me finance. So he taught me, taking my money to the bank, what the bank teller would say, what the bank president would say, where they would try to get me to invest. And, he was a big finance guy. He wrote state finance legislation laws. So it was like someone like that, it was like old people and kids, right? That was kind of like my mission in Charlotte.
What is like one of the hardest lessons you learned as being an NBA athlete or a professional athlete in general?
I would say for me is, I had to learn the hard way. Everybody told me, no, don't do it. It's not a good idea. I wouldn't get an agent. So I had my own agent. And I would say, learning how to invest, understanding values of companies. Like, it was really like a hands-on experience. It wasn't like guided. It wasn't that somebody brought me a deal. It was really through curiosity and like, deciding at one point in my life that the next 4 or 5 years of my life is going to be my own business school. And whatever I'm good at, I'm going to succeed. Whatever I'm not, I'm going to learn more, to build success for myself. So I would say off the court, just the people who offer you deals, the people who come into your life or try to come into your life and try to negotiate on your behalf, or the people that come into your life that just want to be around you to leverage and create more value for themselves, right? So, it's for athletes. A lot of times it's a lonely space, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you're vulnerable and susceptible to, interacting with a lot of people. Some of them can have great intentions, some of them not. I would say for me, curiosity, right? Always looking to do something different. I was 22 years old. I was signing a deal with Sprite. My guy at Sprite was leaving, said he was going to a company called Vitamin Water. I was like, dude, don't do it. It's a terrible idea. That's just nasty. And then he was like, no, they're good founders. They're working on the product. I was like, yeah. I was like, introduce me to them, met the guys. They had no money. I was due for a big marketing deal. So I just took the no money deal because I liked my guy. And I was like, it would be cool to actually take no money because I was already, at sign a max contract. And why don't I take equity and shares in this business? And like, who knows, maybe it'll be as big as Powerade. And, kind of like that story wrote and told itself. At that point, I think people thought that I was like some expert investor. I always say like I was lucky. I was lucky and curious.
You want to talk about NFT stuff that's going on? This is your opportunity, man, to highlight what you do.
Yeah,
right?
I would
And like
say,
educate the folks.
for a lot of people, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, it's like a curse word or a bad word. I say for us, we look at it as data and receipts, and so, there's a phrase in culture is like, I got receipts. And so we look at, basically blockchain and the infrastructure around Web3 as keeping receipts. And so, how many times do we give our data away? How many times do we get spammed or put on mailing lists? Right? How much shit do we have that we don't want? You know what I mean? And then where's the authentication of the valuable things that we own? That if we wanted to have real resale or true value sale, whether it's a pair of shoes that you bought and you're like, you know what, I'm never wearing these, I want to sell them. How can somebody determine that, one, they're real, one, they're for you, and then two, they're there. So, we look at, NFTs as a way to empower people like photographers, artists, content creators. And at the core of it, it's IP. It's IP management. It's also data collection of the IP, and then it's a great way to, the same way you would do in music and a painting or Getty Images. It's a great way to have a contract to abide by that pays all of your people in real time. And so the way we look at, NFTs is, the art is great, but what is the real utility behind it, right? We launched NFT called the League of Santas. We did not sell out. Our intentions were, we wanted to launch something so we can build trust with the community and people who are musicians or wanted to A&R albums or submit records. You buy a League of Santa and you could participate in, the making of our holiday album, right? So everything that we have has, true distribution, right? And true kind of metrics for, an exchange of a digital collectible.
We can talk about the studio though.
Yeah. So with that said,
we do have a physical studio, and our goal was to empower creators. So take creators, give them creator tools, distribution tools. SLIC stands for Sports, Lifestyle, and Culture. The goal of SLIC was to look at social media and say, where are the great creators at? Where are the great channels? And build micro networks to service those communities by creating original content. And producing, I would say original IP from those channels. So for Slick right now, we have like 20 channels that we've acquired off YouTube and just from a creator ecosystem. And now we're going to relaunch those as, news channels, podcast channels, and ultimately like digital magazines. We're partnered up with the NBA to be a third party media partner. So it allows us to like market, promote their shows, but also drive traffic and produce, assets that they would ultimately greenlight from a Slick perspective. Um, and with that, as a creative, I made a movie called Domino. I have a show on Hulu called WTF Baron Davis. I don't know if anybody has seen it, but it's pretty funny.
It is
And
actually.
I also trademarked Black Santa, and I make like children's books. So I wrote a children's book around Black Santa. The reason for League of Santas was I wanted to use, NFTs to secure the IP. And now the League of Santas is more a collaborative project around, people being able to identify what would a Santa look like to you. And so a Santa does not have to be a male, Santa can be female, and we get through the League of Santas to create our Marvel universe of, these new Santas that bring, uh, their powers and their heritage into, this holiday space. I guess I'll speak on big because that's what we're launching All-Star Weekend. So I started big to say, like, why can't we create our own Forbes meets LinkedIn and create an app that allow people to be a part of this, investment membership club through dinners, fireside chats, virtual experience, conversations, and then ultimately summits where we take entrepreneurs and we create our own demo day showcase, right? And really with intention, put the entrepreneur, the investor, the C-suite all at the table together. And so for Big, it was really about how do we empower the next version of entrepreneurs? How do we make a difference in the numbers? And when I say the numbers, the marginalized numbers of women, of people of color, right, who are trying to, penetrate markets like in the VC space, entrepreneurial space, Web3 space. And so with that, Big is, allowing, through the app and through the membership and also just through our connections and events to really empower and surround, and build an ecosystem where everybody supports everybody. Right. And have subject matter, whether it's health and wellness, digital marketing, women in sports, right? To think about our collectives as branded collectives so they can travel and move around the country preaching their gospel. And so Big, at the core of everything, we get to manage entrepreneurs, investors, C-suites, and we get to present events that everybody get to participate, connect, and everything you need is at a big event.
Hey, congrats on your NBA career, Baron. I'm a lifelong Warriors fan. Just to let you know. So I'm all about the We Believe Warriors. So my question pertains to that. Sorry, I'm asking a basketball question, everybody. So I'm curious. I mean, I know you had that monster dunk on Andre Kirilenko. I'm curious, like, when is the last time you saw him? And when you did see him, like, what kind of interaction do you guys have? I'm just curious.
Oh man, that's my brother. Andre Kirilenko, and I tell people all the time, is a future Hall of Famer to me. He was one of the best defenders. And sometimes you only see a person for a play in a play, and you don't really recognize their greatness. Now, me and Andre Kirilenko had a thing about that dunk. He knew it was coming. You know what I mean? He's a shot blocker. That's what happened to shot blockers. So anytime I see him, it's all love because, you know, it's like a joke. If he would have blocked it and I would have fell on my back, you know what I mean? It would have been on me. But, you know, we're super cool. He know what time it is. I would never embarrass him. It happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My whole thing is like, I mean, that's what I do on the court. I try to embarrass you, but off the court, you know, I'm gonna love on you, appreciate you, and respect you. So with Karolinko, he's actually a GM. I feel like he's a GM of a big Euro team, and so he's always in LA, and we hang out. So it's not really like a big deal, unless I'm drunk and I'm like, no, I'm just playing. I would never do that.
That's the answer I was looking for. I thank you. My friends would never forgive me if I didn't ask that question. So thanks so much, Baron. Appreciate it.
So my question for you is, how do you feel about being known for your beard?
I like it. I wish I would have had like a beard deal or like a beard shampoo or something like that. But it's cool. The funny thing is the whole Fear the Beard campaign originated from, you know, as you know, the playoffs. Nobody was wearing, you know, facial hair. I got it from the I got it from the hockey guys, and there was a sign, and some guys who are now big time marketers, they came up with a whole blog called Fear the Beard, and they had my beard talking. And I did back in the day some viral videos with like Darren Williams and things like that around beards, but it's cool. Like, you know, I'm not gonna get rid of it. My kids like it. I felt like if I cut it off, they would like be like, "What happened to my daddy?" So I got to stick to this look. They don't want me to change up too much.
If you were to sum it up in one sentence, where do you see Web3 and NFTs for artists going in the next couple years?
I would say it's going to experientials and it's going to tickets. And tickets are going to give you access to like bonus tracks, merchandise. So if you're familiar with Nipsey, I know this is not one sentence, but the Nipsey Hustle model, the proud to pay, that's where NFTs are going. If that answers it. So Nipsey Hussle, for some of the people, he had an album called Proud to Pay. He charged $100 for his album. People thought he was ridiculous. It was ludicrous. But with that album, you got a marathon t-shirt, a marathon hat, and you got tickets to one of his shows. At the time, he was not a well-known artist. And so, you know, he saw the value of himself and he created basically a package. So I think NFTs are going to be, you know, the new Proud to Pay. Like I would pay $100 for an artist album, the merch, and a ticket for a future show.
Switching gears here, first and foremost, fellow Bruin, so shout out there. But I guess my question for you is, ever since we've seen this shift in NCAA athletes getting paid on social, what's your perspective on that? Is that something that you wish that you had had the opportunity to do when that was sort of your, perspective?
Lizzie, let me tell you, Lizzie, if I had it back then, oh my gosh, I would have took everything. I would have took everything off the table. I like it because the schools are trying to monetize networks, brands, things like that. So why not give these kids at least that opportunity to monetize themselves?
Totally, me too. I share the same sentiment.
Any other questions out there before we wrap up? And BD, I still want your answer on who you think is going to take it. Maybe we'll stop there. We'll allow you.
One more thing to what Lizzie said. I also feel like the schools are not doing a good job of partnering with the athletes. You think about like my jersey at UCLA. There's a great opportunity to build legacy with former players and the legacy people and connect them to the young people. I know I was going to put out an NFT of myself and just donate all the proceeds to the UCLA women's basketball team. So we're working on things like that, to help empower. We couldn't get a job. We couldn't do all this. We couldn't get free food, free tickets, free shirts. Now the opportunity is like, if they do have money, they can be the one that's generous and like taking care of the crew, making sure people eat. So you don't want to go to college and starve. You don't want to go to college and be in debt. You don't want to go to college and not make it pro and then realize like, oh, I never have nothing to show for it. So why not give them the ability to create value for themselves now?
BD, thanks for your time, man. Take us out with, I still want to know who you think is going to win. And then if there's any other kind of parting comments or ways for us to connect with you, be supportive of what you're doing. I'm big on actionables, man, and making sure that we return the favor to you. So I'll stop there and allow you to wrap us up.
Yeah, I would say, one, thank you all for the time. This was super cool. Pierre spoke highly about you all, and the business, is very admirable. Hopefully get a chance to work with you all at some capacity on something in some time frame.